Let us know when you pass so we can include you in our shoutouts. As always, work hard, study hard. Let's get to our questions. Jay wants Bill to stay out of his room. Anytime Bill walks into the room, Jay will jump out and scare him. Bill will cry and run out the room. Bill's crying is what? All right. Behavior question. So we need to first identify what behavior is the question asking about, because a lot is going on in this particular question. Well, we're looking at Bill's crying. So ask yourself, what is Bill's crying in response to? What evokes, what elicits Bill's crying? Well, Jay jumps out and scares him, so Bill will cry. I use the word evoke and elicit because those words are going to help you identify if something is respondent behavior or operant behavior. A reflex is elicited, right? That involuntary reflex, crying, sweating, heart rate increasing, blinking, so on and so forth, salivating like Pavlov, is a reflex that is elicited, that is responded. Other behavior is operant, right? It's evoked by antecedents. In this case, what is Bill doing? Well, Bill is crying, okay, in response to Jay jumping out and scaring him. The scaring him elicits the reflex of crying. This is going to be respondent behavior. Now, this one is pretty easy, right? Because crying is a reflex, okay, and the consequence isn't controlling the behavior. It's an SR contingency. Why is it not positive punishment? Well, we're not sure if Bill behavior is decreasing. What it looks like is Bill continues to walk in this room because anytime Bill walks in the room, Jay jumps out and scares him. So there's no indication that Bill is being punished here. Additionally, okay, we're looking at Bill's crying, not staying out of the room, but Bill's crying, right? So we're looking at the respondent behavior here. Okay, that's why it's important to identify what behavior you're actually talking about or what the behavior the question is actually asking you about. And then negative reinforcement, no, because nothing is being taken away. Bill's behavior is not increasing. And again, we're looking at this crying behavior, which is a reflex, right? When it's a reflex, it's going to be respondent behavior. So Bill's crying is what? Respondent behavior. Jerry's wife loves that he cooks dinner every night. The only problem is Jerry leaves the stove on constantly. Jerry's wife is worried about a gas leak or a fire starting. What type of intervention will be the best to target Jerry's behavior? So what is Jerry's behavior? Always read the question carefully and ask yourself, what is this question asking me? We're asking about Jerry's behavior. And Jerry is leaving the stove on. Okay, that's a problem, right? Not only will it run up the gas bill, not only is it an annoyance, but it's also what? A safety issue. Jerry's wife is worried about a gas leak or a fire starting. In this case, when we have something that's considered a safety issue, a hazard, what do we want to do? Well, we want to make sure we eliminate this behavior altogether, right? We don't want this behavior to be able to occur. And that's going to lead us to the correct answer in this question. Because if we want to eliminate this behavior entirely, we need to pick an intervention where Jerry is unable to engage in leaving the stove on. So what about a DRA? Well, a DRA will teach Jerry a replacement behavior. The only issue is Jerry is going to be taught a replacement behavior that can possibly occur at the same time as him leaving the stove on. That is not acceptable here because Jerry leaving the stove on could cause a gas leak or a fire starting. So we can't teach Jerry a replacement behavior that will allow him or give him the opportunity to leave the stove on. So what about DRI? DRI is going to be much better, right? Because now we're going to teach Jerry an incompatible behavior. Remember, DRA and DRI are the same, except for DRI teaches something incompatible with the target. So our target is Jerry leaving the stove on. DRI, we're going to teach something incompatible with that to try and avoid this possible emergency situation. What's wrong with DRL? Well, with DRL, we're not necessarily getting rid of the behavior. What's wrong with DRD? DRD, yes, DRD can work to eliminate it, but DRD is slowly decreasing the behavior, right? We're setting criterions, and as the behavior slowly decreases below that criterion, we're getting rid of it. The problem here is we want to get rid of this as quick as possible, right? Again, it's an emergency situation. DRD, yes, can possibly eliminate the behavior. However, a DRI, I should say, is going to more quickly or try to more quickly eliminate this behavior. So what type of intervention would be best to target Jerry's behavior? A DRI, teaching Jerry something incompatible with leaving the stove on. Behaviorism is the guiding philosophy of behavior science and blank. Task list section or A2 or A3, right? We need to know the types of behavioral science or behaviorism or aspects or components of behaviorism, right? So behaviorism, of course, is our umbrella. We have experimental analysis of behavior. We have applied behavior analysis, and then we have practice guided by behavior analysis. Don't slack off on part A of the task list, okay? I know it's easier, part B as well, right? This is the easier stuff. This is the rudimentary stuff. This is the foundations. The problem is when you focus all your energy on the hard stuff, you might miss easy questions like this on the exam. We need to give equal respect to the entire task list. Don't worry about that report they put out, which tells you what percentage of questions is from what part of the task list, okay? It's going to do more harm than good. We have to give equal respect to all parts of the task list, meaning don't skip A and B to get to the harder stuff. Okay, that being said, behaviorism is the guiding philosophy of behavior science and what? And a result of interactions between the individual and others around them. Sure, right? Absolutely. Behaviorism is a result of the interactions between the individual and others around them. But is that the best possible definition? Is that the most precise definition? Well, let's look at B, a result of interactions between the individual and the environment. Others around them are part of the environment, but so are all the other stimuli, right? A is okay, B is just much better. And the exam is all about picking the best answer, meaning we need to read every single answer choice, every single question. Don't see A, fall in love with A, pick A and move on. Read A, read B, read C, and read D. Behaviorism is the guiding philosophy of behavior science and a result of interactions between the individual and the environment. Behaviorism is the guiding philosophy of behavior science and radical behaviorism. Okay, sure, we use radical behaviorism in ABA, right? And we use verbal behavior. So, yes, behaviorism does guide radical and verbal behavior, but the most precise and accurate definition is going to be B. Behaviorism is the guiding philosophy of behavior science and a result of interactions between the individual and the environment. We have to pick the best answer, okay? That's what gets many people on this exam is the questions are written in a way where one or two or even three answer choices look really good. Fluency is where your fluency is where you're going to be able to tackle questions like this, where we have multiple answers that look decent. When we're fluent, okay, then we can pick our best answer using our best gut instinct and the best knowledge we have, right? If we're not fluent, then we're just guessing. We want to eliminate the guessing. We want to start knowing, okay? All right, phrases like, I think it's a ball, I want a cupcake, and I see a boat all contain what? Okay, so we know phrases aren't textuals, okay? Phrases, I think a ball, I want a cupcake, and I see a boat, we're not reading anything. They're not transcriptions because we're not writing them down, right? We're not taking notes. And it's not symmetry because we're not looking at any sort of stimulus equivalence. So that leaves us with autoclitics. So yes, we can eliminate, by process of elimination, find the right answer. Autoclitics simply modify, add to verbal operands, okay? So instead of tacting, right, say boat, you say, I see a boat. Instead of manding for cupcake, you say, I want a cupcake. And maybe instead of completing by an interverbal by just saying ball, you say, I think it's a ball. These autoclitics, right, modify our operands and add to them, okay? So whenever you see extended verbal operands like this, okay, start thinking autoclitics. Kevin Kisner is a professional golfer. Sometimes he will take a big swing with the driver, and sometimes he will take a much smaller swing with the wedge. What does this demonstrate? Okay, Kevin Kisner, even if you know nothing about golf, you ask yourself, what are we looking at? Well, we're looking at his behavior. He takes a big swing, and then he takes a much smaller swing. When we're dealing with responses or behaviors, are we talking about discrimination or are we talking about differentiation? Well, remember what the extended term is, right? Discrimination is actually stimulus discrimination. We're not talking about Kevin Kisner's ability to discriminate between stimuli here. We're talking about his ability to differentiate between responses. He's not just grabbing every single club and taking this huge swing. Depending on the club, he's taking a different response. First, he takes a big swing, and then he takes a much smaller swing. He's differentiating between responses. Understand the difference between stimulus discrimination and response differentiation. Now, why is it not stimulus generalization? Well, stimulus generalization says there's one response that occurs across multiple stimuli. If he took a big swing for all of his clubs, that would be stimulus generalization, but he's not, right? He's differentiating. Takes a big swing and takes a smaller swing. And he's not imitating. Why? Well, there's no other person involved. Imitation is a social behavior. He is not imitating anybody. He's differentiating between the big swing and the smaller swing. Discrimination deals with stimuli. Differentiation deals with responses. Which of the following is not a possible unwanted effect of reinforcement? Keyword, not. You have to read carefully. Don't skip that word not. If you don't see that word not, which many people read quickly and don't, this question becomes almost impossible. So now we identify not. What is the question asking? The question is asking about unwanted effects of reinforcement. Well, let's see. A, the learner satiates on the reinforcer. Is that an unwanted effect of reinforcement? Sure, right? If we use reinforcement too much, the learner might get too much of it and they might satiate on it. What happens when you satiate? Motivation decreases. It's a problem. B, there is a decrease in the functionally equivalent behavior that is not receiving the same amount of reinforcement. Is that an issue? Well, it is, right? If we have a couple behaviors and we're accidentally reinforcing the behavior that we don't want to see, the functionally equivalent behavior that's not receiving the same amount of reinforcement is just going to start to decrease. That's a problem, okay? So we need to be very careful about what functional behavior we're targeting and how much reinforcement is being delivered for the behaviors we want to see and that we don't want to see. What about C? Unintentionally reinforcing an undesired behavior. Probably the most unwanted effect of reinforcement, right? Especially when we're dealing with attention. If you work in the field of autism, you know how powerful attention can be for behavior. One slip up and you give attention to the wrong behavior once, we have a problem on our hands, right? We have to be super, super careful about delivering reinforcement appropriately. So A, B, and C are all possible unwanted effects. What are we looking for? Not, right? The not a possible unwanted effect. Leaves us with D, the behavior targeted for increase shows an increasing trend after reinforcement is provided. Isn't that what we want? We want to increase the behavior. After reinforcement is provided, we have an increasing trend. So what is our behavior doing? It's increasing. This is not an unwanted effect. This is exactly what we want reinforcement to do. So which of the following is not a possible unwanted effect of reinforcement? Well, the behavior we want to increase increases after reinforcement. Shaping is a crucial component of blank. Whenever you see a term, first thing you do is stop and you define it in your head. Okay, so define shaping. Shaping is reinforcing successive approximations of behavior until you reach a terminal behavior. Why do we do that? Well, especially when we're practicing, we need to get fluent. You should read shaping and instantly know what that is. What we don't want to do is get into the exam, read shaping as a crucial component and start thinking, oh man, what is shaping? I don't remember. It's going to slow you down. It's going to exhaust you. Okay. And you're going to end up guessing. Define it in your head as soon as you see the term, and your fluency is going to get that much better. Even better when you're studying alone or by yourself or with a partner, define things out loud. Start studying out loud. Okay. You'd be surprised how much better you'll get if you do things out loud. Now, back to the question. Shaping is a crucial component of what? Is shaping a crucial component of modeling? Yes, right? Shaping is a crucial component of modeling because shaping is a crucial component of imitation. When we're modeling something, right, we're going to start modeling what we want the learner to do, okay? And as the learner imitates, okay, we're going to slowly reinforce as we get closer to the learner imitating exactly what we're doing or imitating the model exactly, okay? Shaping is a crucial component of both modeling and imitation. Seems like a pretty straightforward, easy question, but I'm here to tell you that on the exam, not every question is going to be extremely hard. That's why we need to get the easy ones right so we can save energy and time for the harder ones. Shaping is a crucial component of both. Which of the following answer choices have formal similarity and point-to-point correspondence? So we're looking at formal similarity and point-to-point correspondence. What is formal similarity? It's when the responses, okay, or the verbal operand or whatever takes the same form, the same topography. So speaking and speaking, right? If I say hi and you say hi, speaking hi and speaking hi share the same similarity. If I write the word dog and you write the word dog, same formal similarity. If I write the word bus and you write the word cow, same formal similarity, right? Writing and writing. Now, point-to-point correspondence means whatever I write, whatever I say is going to be exactly the same as what you write and what you say. So if I write dog and you say dog, that has point-to-point correspondence, but it doesn't have formal similarity. Why? Because I wrote and you said, which don't have the same form, but we both wrote dog, or I wrote dog and you said dog, which has point-to-point correspondence because dog is exactly the same. Little bit of a confusing concept, and it gives people a lot of trouble. You have to really, really practice formal similarity and point-to-point correspondence. I'm telling you, you don't want to miss these questions on the exam, okay? But it takes practice. So we want to find the answer choice that has formal similarity and point-to-point correspondence. A, you read a written note out loud, word for word. Okay. Well, you reading a written note, is that the same form? No. Your friend asks what you want to do tonight, and you say you want to go to a movie. Same form? Sure, spoken and spoken. But your friend asked what? What do you want to do tonight? And you said, go to a movie. We're lacking point to point. Your teacher writes a word, and you write the same word. Formal similarity? Yes, write and write. Your teacher writes a word, you write the same word, point to point? Yes. The form is the same, and the point to point correspondence, the words are exactly the same. C looks good. Billy looks at a cookie and says cookie. That's just a tact, right? Billy saw the cookie and he said cookie, not the same form, okay? Our answer here is going to be C. Your teacher writes a word and you write the same word. You ask your RBT to record momentary time sampling data on screaming behavior. You set the interval at 25 seconds. How long does screaming need to occur to count as a response? Very easy question, okay? Ask yourself, what type of measurement are we using? We're using momentary time sampling. What is momentary time sampling recording? Well, it's when we look up and we look at the learner at the end of the interval and we record whether they're engaged or not engaged in the target response. If we set our interval at 25 seconds, what is the end of the interval? 25 seconds. So how long does the screaming need to occur? Well, only at the end of 25 seconds, right? Because we're going to look at momentary time sampling. A, the behavior has to occur for any amount of time to count as a response. What if the behavior occurred at the 22-second mark? Well, that doesn't count, right? Because we're using momentary time sampling. We're worried about the end of the interval. The behavior has to occur for 25 seconds to count as a response. That is what? That would be whole interval. Same as C, the behavior has to occur, so B would be whole interval. C would, the behavior has to occur at 25 seconds to count as a response. So what's the difference between B and C? Well, B, you're saying it needs to occur the entire 25 seconds, which is whole interval. C, you're saying the behavior has to occur at 25 seconds, which is the end of the interval. which is momentary time sampling. So far, C looks really good. And then D, the behavior has to occur for the majority of the time. No, we're not looking for the majority. We're not looking for the whole. We're not looking for the partial. We're looking for the moment in the moment at the end of the interval, which is going to be at 25 seconds. How long does screaming need to occur? The behavior has to occur at 25 seconds to count as a response. A complaint is made to you that one of your RBTs is lazy and does not implement your behavior plans correctly. You schedule a supervision session to see for yourself. During supervision, you observe the RBT working with the client and implementing the plan. Explain this discrepancy in a behavior analytic way. Okay, a couple things in this question, right? First, we want to describe it in a behavior analytic way, meaning observable, measurable. There's a discrepancy between the RBT's performance, right, when you're not around. And then during supervision, the RBT is now working with the client and implementing the plan. Okay. Now, do we just not take the complaint seriously? Well, no, right? We have to take this complaint seriously and we need to see what exactly is going on. The strange thing, though, is when you see them, the RBT is doing great work, right? What's changed in the environment? Well, your presence. And if your presence as the BCBA affects the RBT, what do we call that? A, the complaint was made up to get the RBT in trouble. Is this behavior analytic? Not at all. Made up, get in trouble. None of this is behavior analytic. A is a bad answer. B, the RBT is experiencing reactivity. Here we go, right? In the presence of a stimuli, a person, right? Behavior changes. This is what's happening. RBT is lazy, does not implement behavior plans. All of a sudden, observation comes around and they're the best RBT ever. Reactivity. This is not uncommon. C, observer drift is occurring. Observer drift means the way you're measuring something changes, okay? We're not sure because during supervision, RBT seems to be doing everything correctly, okay? So we can't say observer drift is occurring. And then D, the RBT's behavior is on extinction. Well, we don't know what's maintaining the RBT's behavior, so we don't know what we would do to put the behavior on extinction, right? So we can't pick D. Our answer has to be B, the RBT is experiencing reactivity because the only thing that changed in our environment is the presence of the BCBA. Okay, well,